worst my gut has ever felt was during my first year of graduate school when I was studying biomedical engineering. I was under a ton of pressure, long hours, high stakes, late nights, and constant deadlines. And my digestion was completely falling apart. It was way worse than it had ever been. Worse than childhood, worse than anything I'd experienced before. And I kept thinking, like, I'm eating well, I'm sleeping, I'm doing everything I can. Why is this getting worse? And it took working with a functional nutritionist to finally understand what was happening. My stress system and my gut weren't actually two separate problems happening at the same time. They were one problem. The chronic pressure of that period of my life had my nervous system so dysregulated that my gut simply didn't have the conditions it needed to function. That realization completely changed how I practice moving forward. And it's the foundation of everything I'm going to share with you today. And before we dive in, I have a free training and a free quiz that are linked at the top of the description to help you figure out where your gut is breaking down and what your next best step could be. More on that at the end, so let's get into it. I'm Erin Harner. I'm an integrated registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in gut health, chronic constipation, and IBS-C. And this is video number 3 in my dedicated IBS-C series. So far, we've covered why standard advice fails IBS-C and why the microbiome is a central driver in the pathogenesis of IBS-C. Today, we're going deep into root cause number 4 that I explained in video number 1, the nervous system connection. And this is the one that has to be addressed before most of the other interventions will actually help. If you have IBS-C, there's a good chance you've heard some version of this. It's just stress. Or have you tried relaxing more? Why don't you try meditating? Or maybe it's anxiety. And here's what makes this so complicated. Stress is connected to IBS-C. The nervous system is involved. Research confirms it without a doubt. So the dismissal isn't wrong because stress is irrelevant. It's wrong because of what it implies. It's just stress implies that your symptoms aren't real, that you don't actually feel them, that you just need to calm down or do some meditation or some deep breathing, that there's nothing worth investigating, that it's all in your head. That framing is both clinically inaccurate and deeply invalidating. The nervous system connection in IBS-C is not about stress causing imaginary symptoms. It's about a measurable, documented neurological state that directly and physically derives gut dysfunction. There is hard research behind this. There are mechanisms, there are names for the specific processes happening in your body. Your symptoms are not in your head. They are in your nervous system, and those are two completely different things. Let me introduce you to one of the most important and least discussed features of IBS-C, visceral hypersensitivity. And I want to explain this to you how I explain it to my clients. Imagine two people with the exact same amount of pressure or gas in their gut. They have the same physical stimulus, that is, that gas or that pressure is pushing out on the abdominal wall. They have the same internal environment. One person barely notices it, maybe like a mild awareness that something is there, and the other person has significant discomfort or pain from that exact same sensation. What's the difference? That's not one person being dramatic and the other person being stoic or having a high pain tolerance. That's a measurable neurological difference in how each person's gut signals are being processed and perceived. Research shows that the majority of people with IBS actually have altered visceral perception compared to people without IBS. The nerve endings in the gut lining are simply more reactive. Normal gut sensations like gas and pressure and the movement of stool through the colon, that peristaltic motion, get amplified. They register as more intense, more uncomfortable, and sometimes painful, even when the physical reality is completely normal or the same as the person who doesn't have these same symptoms. And here's why this matters so much for how we approach IBS-C. If your gut sensory system is dialed way up, adding more interventions, more fiber, more supplements, more dietary changes to a hypersensitive system often makes things feel worse before they feel better. Not because these things are wrong, but because the nervous system hasn't been addressed first. You can't turn down the volume on visceral hypersensitivity by adding more inputs to a system that's already overwhelmed. It doesn't work. You turn it down by working with the nervous system directly, and that has to come first. You may remember from video 1 in this series that approximately 80% of the signals traveling through the vagus nerve, that communication highway that goes from your gut and your brain, travel from the gut up to the brain whereas only about 20% of signals actually go the other direction, or from the brain down to the gut. I want to sit for a moment with specifically what this means for IBS-C. A dysregulated, backed up, inflamed IBS-C gut is sending distress signals up to the brain the vast majority of the time. And your brain responds to distress signals the way it's designed to, with anxiety, low mood, brain fog, and a heightened state of alert. So when women with IBS-C or chronic constipation also struggle with anxiety and exhaustion, which is incredibly common, the assumption is usually that the anxiety is causing the gut problem. That if she could just manage her stress better, her gut would get better. But here's what the research actually shows. In many cases, the gut is actually leading to the anxiety because the distress signals are traveling upward from the gut to the brain. And the brain is responding completely appropriately to what the gut is telling it. And then this is the part that creates the vicious cycle. The anxiety that the brain generates goes back down through that 20% of downward signals from the brain to the gut and makes gut function worse. It could lead to things like slower motility, more constipation, more distress signals going back up. You can't fully resolve it addressing the gut in isolation, but you can't fully resolve it by addressing the anxiety in isolation either. Both directions of that communication highway have to be addressed to feel better, which is the system that governs your body's stress response. Think of your stress response like a smoke alarm. In most people, the smoke alarm sounds when there's smoke, real smoke, a genuine threat or stressor, and then it resets once that threat passes. The alarm goes off. That is a healthy, functional stress response. In IBS-C, research shows that the alarm becomes hypersensitive. Smaller triggers set it off. It takes longer to reset once it's turned on or once it's activated. And over time, it starts running in the background almost constantly. A low-level hum of activation that never fully quiets down. Your gut is actually on the receiving end of that alarm every single time it sounds. And the gut that's constantly receiving stress signals from a system that never fully resets is a gut that can never fully relax into digestion, into that parasympathetic rest and digest state. And this is one of the reasons why women with IBS-C notice their symptoms are dramatically worse when stressful seasons hit. Not just in the moment of a difficult conversation or a work deadline or a presentation, but for weeks or months of chronic pressure. The alarm was already running at a low level, and any additional stressor just turns up the volume on a system that was already activated. And this is also why the standard advice of reduce your stress is both helpful and completely unhelpful. It names the problem without giving you a single tool to address it. And this brings me to something I feel really strongly about, and that I think is one of the most important clinical insights I can share in this entire series. For IBS-C, nervous system regulation is not a nice to have, it's not an add-on to a gut health protocol. It is the foundation that everything else needs to be built on top of. And this is why, if your nervous system is in a state of chronic dysregulation, if that alarm is running in the background constantly, your gut can't fully shift into the parasympathetic state it needs to digest, absorb, and move stool through efficiently. It can't digest your food. You are simultaneously trying to both activate a function and suppress it at the same time. So you add the most targeted probiotics, you introduce fiber carefully, you change your diet, and things might improve a little bit, but not as much as they should. Not consistently, not sustainably, because the nervous system piece is running in the background, undermining everything else you're trying to do. So if we address the nervous system first, or at least alongside the other things we're trying to do, your gut finally has the conditions it needs to respond. I worked with a client about 6 months ago who came to me after trying just about everything. She tried laxatives and magnesium and probiotics and senna and different diets, and nothing was producing consistent bowel movements. She was still backed up, she was still bloated, and she was super exhausted from trying to manage it all. Sound familiar? When we started working together, I made a decision that surprised her. Instead of adding more interventions, more things to do, more supplements, more dietary changes, we focused on rhythm and nervous system regulation first. We focused on consistent meal timing, consistent sleep timing, early morning light exposure, building predictability into her daily life so her nervous system could start sensing safety in the routine. It would know what to expect. And slowly, not overnight, but steadily, things started to shift for her. Her bloating reduced significantly, and then quietly, consistently. And she started having daily bowel movements. Not every single day at first, but most days. Not because we magically found the right supplement that she was always looking for. Not because we found the one food she needed to eliminate. Because her nervous system finally had enough consistent signals of safety that her gut could relax and actually digest her food. The foundation was rhythm. Everything else we added after that worked because the foundation was in place. It wasn't the whole picture, but it was the start. So if you're wondering what does nervous system regulation look like in your practice, Erin, for IBS-C, I want to give you some real tools, not just reduce your stress, but actually specific practices that have a direct physiological impact on the nervous system. The first one is breath work. This is the fastest access to your parasympathetic nervous system that you have available to you right now. Even 2 or 3 minutes of slow, diaphragmatic breathing before a meal can shift your nervous system from sympathetic activation into rest and digest mode. This isn't just advice I'm throwing out there, this is physiology. Your breath is the one part of your autonomic nervous system that you can consciously control. And using it intentionally before meals creates the conditions internally that your gut needs to actually receive and digest the meal. And when digestion gets better, everything gets better downstream. You're able to digest and absorb your nutrients. You're able to break down proteins and carbs and fats so your body can actually take them in. And they don't become fodder for other bacteria downstream to ferment and create more discomfort. I also love gut-directed hypnotherapy. This is actually one of the best research interventions for IBS specifically, and is dramatically underused. Whether you work with a therapist who specializes in this or explore it on your own, the research supporting gut-directed hypnotherapy for IBS symptoms is really strong. It actually works directly on the gut-brain connection and specifically on visceral hypersensitivity, which makes it especially relevant for those with IBS and IBS-C. I'm also a huge fan of grounding, just simply putting your feet in the grass, taking off your shoes, direct physical contact with the earth. This sounds simple because it is really simple and it has a measurable calming effect on the nervous system. You don't need a lot of time. 5 minutes barefoot outside can shift your physiology in a way that nothing on your phone can really replicate. One strategy that I use on a daily basis is whenever I can, I go outside, I take my shoes off, I take my socks off, and I eat lunch outside in fresh air with my feet in the grass. It's simple, it doesn't take any more time, and it allows me to feel so much more calm and grounded and in that rest and digest state when I'm eating. Another really key strategy is silent walks. Not a podcast walk, not a phone call to a friend, silent. Ideally in nature or somewhere with minimal stimulation. This is nervous system recovery time, not productivity time. Your nervous system needs inputs that don't require processing, decision-making, or response. It's just a time to be with yourself and to experience your senses. Right? Look at the trees, hear the birds, smell the flowers, touch the grass, hug a tree. It is incredibly powerful to be in nature and to just be with yourself without inputs constantly coming into your body. You might notice that your whole nervous system goes down a notch. And most importantly, consistent meal timing and sleep timing is really, really powerful here. This is bringing your body back into rhythm. This is the most powerful and most overlooked nervous system regulation tool for IBS-C specifically. Predictability in your schedule, predictability in your meals, predictability in your sleep, these are safety signals to your body and your brain. When your nervous system, which remember has a hypersensitive alarm, experiences the same routine day after day, it starts to read that predictability is safe. The alarm starts to quiet. Your gut starts to prepare in advance because it knows what's coming. Consistent meal windows, consistent sleep and wake times. Not perfect, not every single day, but consistent. And this can make a significant difference. So I want to close this video with the thing I most want you to take away. Your symptoms are not just in your head. They're in your nervous system. And your nervous system is a physical, measurable, biological system that has been documented in research to function differently in IBS-C. The visceral hypersensitivity in your gut, it's real. The HPA axis dysfunction, it's real. None of this is anxiety that you just need to manage better. All of it has a mechanism. All of it has a path forward. And that path forward is not a perfect life. It's not a stress-free life, and it's not a life where you never have difficult seasons or chaotic weeks, because frankly, we all have them. It's a life where you have built enough rhythm, enough predictability, enough nervous system safety into your daily foundation that your gut can function even when life gets messy. It becomes more resilient. Remember that function follows rhythm. And in IBS-C, rhythm starts here with the nervous system, and everything else we build on top of this. So if this video gave you a framework for something that you've been trying to understand for a while, the next step is figuring out what nervous system and rhythm disruption looks like in your specific situation. My free training called Still Bloated and Backed Up walks you through the 3 gut rhythm mistakes I see most often in women with IBS-C and chronic constipation, including the nervous system piece and exactly what to do about them. And my gut clarity quiz is also linked at the top of the description. It's a 2-minute assessment that helps you identify where your specific rhythm is breaking down and what your most important next step could be. And after either one, if working together feels like the right next step for you, you can actually book a gut clarity call with me directly to talk through a personalized plan for your specific situation. And if this video finally gave you language for something that you've been told was just in your head, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video.